So I'm gonna say something that's unpopular that just needs to be said. All right, and I'm gonna say it. Right.
Oh, we got a gene.
He's leaning in with anticipation. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. The Brazilians, they
Welcome to the Winner Circle, the podcast about jiu-jitsu, MMA, and other combat sports. I am Eugene Plowden, and with me as always, my podcast partner, Angel Diaz, Isaiah Gathings. Missing this week is Chris Walker. What's up, fellas?
what's going on? What's good, fellas? How you doing?
What's up, man?
Good. We are members of the Martial Arts in the Network. Let's get this together for the first show because I did not write this down. On Mondays, you got us, the Winner Circle. Tuesdays is Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. Wednesdays, we have the traditional way with Brett Shumway, and once a month we got Extra Scoop with Jeff and Peyton. Thursdays is Fist Kicks and Flicks with Gene Joe and Angel. For more information, check us out on all of our social media platforms. Just look for the Martial Arts Internet Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon. Fellas, it's showtime. What's going on?
Hey, man, just excited, man. It was an exciting weekend of fights and combat sports. Excited to be here today, man, to just, chat it up with you guys about the weekend, man. It was a good day.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it is. How you doing, Angel? You good, man?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good, man. Just like I said, man, traveling. Got done training earlier today, so I'm really just on like my unwinding time, and then I'm here with my wife, so we're just chilling, and then ready to talk about some combat sports, man. Like we said, it was a good weekend in combat sports. I can actually say that. Good weekend.
All right. So this is episode number 1 of the Winner Circle. We got some bugs to kick out, but we'll get it in time. So let's start off with our intro so we can let everyone know who we are, our background, just letting people know that we're just not random fans of jiu-jitsu or random fans of MMA. We are actually martial artists. We are actually black belts. Now, I do not have a black belt in jiu-jitsu right now. I'm a 3-stripe white belt right now. But I'm gonna start it off, and then I'll kick it to you, Angel, and then the professor. He can be last.
Gotcha.
All right. So my name is Eugene Plowden. I am a 4th degree black belt in American karate. I started karate back in for the first time 1988. Well, actually, I started in about 84 for the first time, and I've stuck with it since 1988. I got my 1st degree black belt when I was 14. And this is just an activity that my family does and I do. I have a school in Detroit, Michigan, Jump Kick Martial Arts. That's my academy. I started jiu-jitsu back in I'm gonna say 2006 is when I first started jiu-jitsu. As a matter of fact, Zeke, my first instructor was Tyrone Gooden. That was my first instructor.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I started with. I started with Ty.
Nice.
And I don't know if you remember, he used to teach out at Universal Mall before they tore Universal Mall down.
Yeah,
They had a
yeah,
school,
that's right.
Macomb Martial Arts. That's where I started. My boxing coach was Ira Kendrick.
Ira Kendrick.
Yeah, so I worked with Ira. I worked with Tyrone because I wanted to be an MMA. I wanted to fight in UFC. That was my goal, right? So when I started, now I was 29, way too old in my opinion, to try and start doing MMA. Like literally a couple of months before I turned 30. And working with Ira, man, I was rushing one time. I did not have time to wrap my hands. Jumped in the ring, started doing glove mitt work with him, and I just had my gloves on, and I hurt my wrists, either on the on his hand pads or the bag, and it took 3 months for my wrist to heal. That's when I knew, okay, I'm getting older now, and my body is not healing as fast as it did when I was a kid, right? So I stopped. I stopped that when that place closed. Now I went to Eastside Combat Club with
Vance.
Yep,
Vance
with Vance
and Brendan.
Yep, I trained with them. I trained with them for a while, man. But their school, their academy was so far out. That was like on M59 or something, man. It was so far.
Yeah.
That I just couldn't commit to driving that far all the time. So then I went to train with Jamel McCurry, and I trained with Jamel.
Classmate of mine. He's a classmate of mine.
Okay.
He trained with me with Monteith.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know you guys with him. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
Jamel is good. Jamel was really, really good.
Very
And he had
good.
a structured program, which I like. He had a very, very structured program. And as I was training with him, I realized at the time, my employer, I was a personal trainer at this time. And I'm pretty much working for myself and at these little random gyms, but I didn't have any health insurance. And I said, you know what? Let me chill on doing jujitsu because sooner or later I'm gonna get hurt. So I said I'm gonna chill for a minute and I'll pick this up later. Not long, I move out of personal training, and I started working in the wireless industry. Get insurance, jump right back in, start working with Jamel again, and it was cool. But then I didn't have the time to go as frequently, so I wanted someplace a little bit closer to me because Jamel still was a nice little hike. It wasn't as far as Eastside Combat Club, but he was still out in Clinton Township at the time, which was nice. I live in Detroit, so it was a little ways away. So then I reached out to my uncle and asked him who did he think I could train with, and then he recommended James Lee. So I reached out to James Lee, and he at the time he was fighting in the UFC. He had just got done with Pride, and he was moving into the UFC. And I reached out to James, and he said, "Yeah, come on to my gym." He had Mass Gym on 8 Mile, and bet right there. So I go over there and start training with them, and I was working with Showtime. Showtime was working with me on boxing, but at this point in time, I just wanted to, just do everything. I wasn't trying to be a competitor. I just wanted to learn this stuff so I can teach it myself. So I'm working with them, and then I ended up, finding out that I'm about to be a father. Son is coming. So now I have to take time out now again, to become a father, learn
Life
how
is
to be a
happening
father.
now. Now
Yeah,
life is happening. It's
exactly,
life.
exactly. So I took a little break from then, and back in 2023, I got back into it in 2023, and that's when I joined Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been with them for a year and a half now. Three stripe white belt, and I enjoy actually being a white belt all over again, man, because I got my first degree black belt in '91 in karate, and from 91 to 2023, like I didn't learn really too much new. I didn't have a structured curriculum, and I'm not learning anything. So I really like the curriculum that I have now and the classes that I go to, and the way that the Gracie combatives is broken down, man. It makes learning jujitsu so much easier for me because we do a lot of repetitive stuff and a lot of repetitive work. And I know that that's questionable for some people. Some people don't like the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu academies, whatever. But I found that it was best for me, so I'm pretty happy with it. So that's my origin story. So Angel, what's up with you, man?
What's up, man? So it's actually funny because I don't think I've ever once had to like go through my whole origin story of my martial arts journey. So I think as I'm hearing you talk, I started thinking, I'm like, I gotta start. I'm trying to remember when was everything. So for me, man, I started. So my name's Angel Diaz. I come out of Connecticut, Stratford, Connecticut. Um, I started martial arts originally when I was 5 years old. I started it with my father. We started at the Wheeler Recreation Center in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he was my first instructor. So he was already doing martial arts. He was already a black belt at that time. I want to say he was a Nidan, a second degree black belt, and my brother at that time was a brown belt. So martial arts was in my family. My system, I do Shotokan karate system. So I myself am a second degree black belt, a Nidan, and a Shotokan karate system. And I started with my father. Then eventually I worked my way up to once he thought I was ready. And once, our head instructor thought I was ready, I started making trips to New York with my father and my brother, maybe 3-4 times a week when I was training there. And I was just under Shion Earl Bennett from New York City, from the Bronx, New York. And then from there, I ended up getting my black belt when I was 18 years old. Got my first degree black belt when I was 18. And then ever since then, I've just been training. It's been a part of my life. It's like, I always tell everybody it's a passion of mine. I don't think I would be able to live and breathe life without having martial arts. That's truly like what I believe. And then I've been competing out on the national circuit So I really started competing, like going out of Connecticut and competing nationally in 2021, 2022. So like right after COVID. Um, and in a short period of time, I was able to be a 3-time world champion. I was the world champion in NASCA Association, WMAC. I just went out there in this past September, in Czech Republic. That's what it was. And I ended up becoming the 2-time world champion there for the minus 74 kilogram and the minus 79 kilogram weight categories. We ended up winning mixed team fights, and then I was able to place in every division I was in, so which was really good. And then after that, I actually started doing my kickboxing and MMA journey. Actually started in this May, would be a year. It was in May of 2024 was when I started. What actually made me start was I actually reached out to an old, now it was not even like a student, like just like a training partner that I was training with him since he was like 12. And we were all older, but we trained with those young guys. He actually made the transition over into MMA and kickboxing. He realized that his talents were better suited for full contact. So I actually reached out to him last April and said, "Hey, I just want to just do some private lessons, just work on some mid sessions. I just want to get my hands a little tighter. That's all." And that's where it started. And he actually put the bug in my ear. He said, "You really should come to one of our sparring nights." And I was like, "Nah, I don't think it'll be good. I think I'm good." And it wasn't that I never thought I could do it. I actually always knew I could do kickboxing and I could do full contact. I think it was just, I was loving karate and I just wanted to excel at it. He was like, "I really think you do good." And then finally one day he's like, "Dude, like, please." He's like, he's like, "I don't even want to do the privates and charge you them because you're so good. You should be able to go to the classes. Like, you should come and do the classes." So finally one day I just told him, I said, "Listen, man, I'll go to one sparring now. I'll see how I feel." And I'll be honest, man, I think I've always had you always hear these stories, and I'm sure Zeke, you have tons of them, of like, not every MMA gym is a great MMA gym to go train at.
You are right about that, man.
Not
You are
everyone,
definitely right about that.
I pride myself really big on when I go to someone else's school for karate. I don't like go in there thinking I'm gonna try and beat everyone in the school. I just go there trying to learn. I always say I'm just another white belt walking through the door. So just teach me. I actually just want to learn. I'm coming because I just want to pick your brain and whatever. So we never know what MMA schools have, and not every school and just karate in general operates under the same system. But I went there, and I actually went there, man. And it was a great, humbling experience. I was able to do my karate, but I was also able to see where we also need to have other components, whether it's the ground game, whether it's the boxing game, whether it's the kickboxing game, whether it's the clinch game. I was able to see other things. And then from there, man, I just got hooked because there's one thing about me. I love being a student of the game. I just love learning about fighting. Like, there's just something about it. I tell people it's like reading a book, except I'm actively reading. There's just something about it that I love. So I started doing the kickboxing classes. I started doing the MMA classes. And then not short after, the head coach at the gym. So I train at FAA, Fighting Arts Academy in Milford, Connecticut. The head coach there is Nick Newell. He was a former XFL champion. He fought in Bellator, fought in PFL, fought in World Series of Fighting, ended up fighting Justin Gaethje on his come up to the UFC for the lightweight title of the World Series of Fighting. And one day he just told me, he said, "You should just come try a jiu-jitsu class, see how you like it." And I always loved doing jiu-jitsu. I always wanted to do it because I actually wanted to learn it for more of just a self-defense, and then also just learn it so that way I just have little things I can teach my students. Just another little self-defense move, just little things that I always feel like could make you a better, well-rounded martial artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going, and then I just love learning, kind of like what you said, Gene, being a white belt again. It kind of helped me be a better instructor in my karate school because now I understand how to piece things together, and I know what white belts feel when they don't understand something and they don't get it, how to bring them to where we want them to go. And then from there, man, I ended up talking to him. I said, "Hey, I think I want to try a tournament out. Like, let me try a jiu-jitsu tournament." And I was like, is that allowed? And is that okay? He said, "Absolutely. Let's try one. Let's see how you like it." And I went, and, for me, I think I had my own personal goals about, regardless of winning, I just wanted to like make certain benchmarks, and I was able to do those things in my first tournament, which I was really happy about. So, that's really where I'm at now. So now I'm in this transition period where I always tell everybody, I love doing karate tournaments. I still do them. I'm just not as active because I also love doing my kickboxing. I love doing my MMA. And I had something I talked about when I was like 14. I said I always wanted to do one kickboxing fight and one MMA fight. I always felt like the type of fighter that I am and the type of way I was trained in karate, that I can bridge that gap and I can go into that realm and I can still hold my own. And I've actually been blessed. I've worked with a lot of pros. Actually, I've had a lot of people in the LFA and Bellator, and a lot of these regional promotions and some of like the professional big time promotions reached out to me about coming out and being a sparring partner in their camp. So a lot of good things have been able to come from it. So that's really my story.
Man, you didn't wait before you had your first jiu-jitsu tournament too, man. You
No,
you have like been training like 5 months, 6 months, something like that before you had your first
honestly,
tournament, right?
if you think about it in total, yeah, it would have been 6 months from like May. But I think I told you guys, like, I wasn't able to go as consistently in the summer
Right.
because of karate. So then when it hit like August or September, I said, man, I really just want to like really hone this craft in, because I understand what it takes to learn something and truly get it. And then yeah, I think I did it like in 2-3 months. I said, let me go. And I think I told you guys, it was like I wasn't even about winning. I got, obviously you want to win, but I was really going there just to really test my skills, and I want to see what in real time what it's really like what's it like when someone's really gonna do a hard double leg, do a hard shoot on you. We lock in a single collar tie, and there's a little bit more pressure. Sometimes when you're in the gym, some people get tired, some people may ease off. They know you're a lower belt. So what happens when we really get to match up and we're in that same belt level? And one of my biggest things was I wanted to make it a full match. Like I didn't want to get tapped out. I didn't want to get subbed. And I ended up fighting through a sub. I ended up making it a full round. So I was just a lot of personal goals I was able to achieve. So from there, yeah, man, that's just really where I'm at with it.
It's
What
cool, cool.
What about you, Zeke?
Isaiah Gathering Senior. I have to put that out there because my son, if you type my name in, he'll probably pop up before me nowadays. He surpassed me in accomplishments by far. So Isaiah Gathering Senior. I have 2 black belts, 8th degree black belt. My core-based martial arts style is Tung Sudo, and then a 1st degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, I've been doing this for quite some time now. I think I got my first black belt around maybe 15 years old. So we talk about maybe about 3 decades ago. All right, dating myself, aging myself a little bit. And when I was coming up, yeah, it was definitely something that I started doing and began doing because I'm not a tall adult, which means I wasn't a tall kid. And many people who grow up in the inner city of Detroit, which is where I'm from, they have similar experiences, especially when you come from a single parent household like I did. My brothers were older than me and they had already departed the home. So it was just me and mom for the most part. I was always more afraid of my mother than I was the bullies. And I was a kid that it was like, if you don't come back with these grades, you're going to have to deal with me when you get home. So you better figure it out when you're at school. So at some point, I after being bullied for some time, I decided I wanted to get involved in some lessons. A friend of mine, he began training first. His parents had the means to enroll him in a Taekwondo academy, 7 Mile and Gratiot. Your uncle's familiar with that academy. Master Shim, I believe it was, who ended up passing away. And he would then come back and he would teach me. So because my mother could not afford for me to take lessons at the time. So I informally started training in Taekwondo, eventually met my instructor who was running the program close to my house that was in walking distance. I actually saw a young man walking down the street with the gi on one day while I was outside practicing the moves that I learned from my friend. And I said, where are you getting ready to go? Where are you training? And he told me there was a community center that was nearby on 6th and Gratiot. You should come and check it out. I went and checked it out, met Grandmaster Cortez Franklin. At the time, wasn't my instructor, became my instructor. The classes were affordable, for a single mother. And I mean, I took bottles back, man. I took food stamps to the store and got change back. I did whatever I needed to do. I put my allowance, whatever I needed to do to be there. I knew it was an environment that I wanted to be in. It was something I was always excited about, interested in, and to have the opportunity to be able to do it was just a blessing and a godsend. He eventually kind of took me in like a son. And like I said, I got my first black belt around 15 years old, I think. In the meantime, though, I also cross-trained and actually got enrolled in the Taekwondo school and trained in Taekwondo. Also trained in some Muay Thai kickboxing informally as well. So by the time I got around 18 years old, I started to look at all of the arts in the individual fashion and realize that they were all lacking certain components. Taekwondo is a great, very strong art, but we all know that it's very kick heavy and based off of kicks and things of that nature. Tang Sudo is a lot more balanced, all right, but it lacks some areas as well. Some of the grit and aggression that you'll get from a Muay Thai fighter. Muay Thai was, at the time, I used to think was one of the superior arts prior to training in Jiu-Jitsu. Based on the movement, the striking, I believe that it was more geared towards what a real street fight would be like. Elbows, knees, the movement. It was not as karate-ish, right, as the other styles. It wasn't steep in the same level of tradition, which has no place in a street fight when you're talking about defending yourself and fighting for your life. So I really gravitated towards that and trained in it, but I realized that lacked some things that the other arts ended up, having as well. So I came up with a concept of being able to blend the arts that I learned together, which is where soodothai came from, which is my academy, the Academy of Soodothai, which is in Clinton Township, Michigan, and it is a mixture of Taekwondo, Tang Sudo, and Muay Thai kickboxing, taking the more strong components out of each one of them and then balancing out some of the weaker components. I did realize that none of those had a ground game, though. And I realized that when I met a good friend of mine, Montes Peterson, who became my instructor. Through the DMAA, we created something called the Detroit Martial Arts Alliance, myself and a few other people in Detroit, just to try to bridge the gap between some of the martial arts systems and styles and schools. We would meet regularly, and Montes was a part of this, and he at the time was the only one doing jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu was still very new in Michigan. In fact, there was only one black belt in the whole state, I believe. And I believe.
And what year was that?
That was in 2002, 2003-ish. And I believe that was Harvey Berman at a Warrior Way. I think he either just getting ready to get his black belt or just got his, but he was the only one. Montes was just a purple belt. Tyrone wasn't a black belt yet.
No.
So it was, jiu-jitsu was so new still to the area as the UFC was starting to gain steam and still build, that I remember going to Borders and I would have to buy the books, the instructional books, so I can look at the moves that we were learning in class to practice them. You couldn't go on the internet and find it anywhere. You have to find it. When ADCC came, it was the best thing ever because you can finally see jiu-jitsu outside of, a competition, which there were few and far between. There were only like one or two a year in Michigan. And then you'd have to travel to different seminars because the Brazilians were still in charge of things. So I started training with Montes. I remember going over to his school, and my thought process was like most men, I'm not about to get between no grown man legs. I don't know what you think. That's not about to happen. I'm not about to be sitting in between a grown man leg, having a grown man sitting on top of me. So I went to a class, which I thought was ridiculous at the time. And him and I started talking afterwards because he's a black belt in his own respective martial art as well, traditional martial art. And we started talking. I was talking about Muay Thai and how that can do this, and that, and some of the other stuff. And he said, "Well, look, let's just play around. Let's just spar real quick." And I said, "Nah, man, I don't want to hurt you." I'm talking crap and smiling. And you're like, "Bro, look, come on, let's just move around for a minute." Within 30 seconds, this man took me down on the ground and submitted me. Within 30 seconds. Now, at this point in time, I had already been training a substantial period of time. I had some degrees on my black belt at this point in time. And he said, "Look," and I'm not even considered good. He said, "I'm not even like a black belt." And when he said that, that stood out to me. I'm like, it's people out here that know this, that's not good, that can do that to me after I've been training in martial arts all of this time. I said, "I tell you what, I'll see you tomorrow." I showed up the next day with my heavyweight karate gi because I just had a heavyweight karate gi that you do forms in. And I said, "How long does it take to get a black belt?" He said, "Well, I'm not a black belt yet." He said, "I don't know." He said, "It's supposed to be like 10 years." I said, "Well, this is day one." And I never stopped past that day. I went every single class. I never missed. Consistency was always a big key of mine. And
how
at
often
the
was
same
it?
time,
I was gonna say, how often was he having classes and where?
He was having classes 3 days a week, and I was balancing it because I started going over to your uncle Grandmaster Plowing School, and I was over there 3 days a week. So I was doing Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays over training under the plowing systems, and then I was doing Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays training jiu-jitsu. And then I still had my own program that I was teaching, as well. So I had my own school and my own program I was teaching at the same time. So it was, that was how I got introduced to jiu-jitsu. I didn't do my first competition until I was blue belt, which again, there wasn't many competitions. It wasn't as popularized as it is now. And I believe that Angel did it the right way. You should compete early. It is a much safer combative sport with there being no striking element involved, where if I'm not as prepared as I probably should be, there's a tap system, which is safe, right? But I still get the experience and I still get an opportunity to see, what I'm netting, what I'm good at, and what I need to improve at. And it helps not just myself, but it also helps my instructor be able to also understand real time what I'm gaining and what I'm netting as well. But with that said, I went when I was a blue belt first competition. I got smoked. I got smoked, man. It took me 3 years to get my blue belt, by the way. So I'm at this point, I'm like, I'm ready. Not thinking, same thing like with sport variety, because I started competing late and I wasn't competing as frequently. So it took a while for me to get good because my instructor was only taking this like one tournament a year. We didn't start going to tournaments actively to myself and my friend Nate just got permission to go, and we started going on our own because that wasn't enough. And I knew I needed more, right? But by the time I competed once in my first tournament, these people were seasoned. 3 years, like 3 years. So imagine how many competitions they had done in 3 years. So I was dejected. I got tapped. I think I got tapped with the omoplata in my first match. Come on. And what was funny was this. Here's what's funny. I was watching ADCC the night before. I was watching ADCC the night before to get hype. And I was like, and somebody got put in omoplata, and I laughed. I said, dog, how could you allow somebody to put you in that submission? How ridiculous this would be. Next day, went to tournament, dude tapped me with an omoplata, and then I went against the same guy again later, I think, in like a absolute blue belt or something. And he tapped me with like a triangle. You know what I mean? And he's the nicest guy. I still talk to him today. But yeah, after I did my first, while I was training also in jiu-jitsu, I started picking up in mid process. I started looking at the realism of the projection, the trajectories, the word I'm looking for that MMA had and where it was going, and how prominent it was becoming, just across, the world. And I remember when I first started training in it, a lot of my traditional martial art friends looked at me weird, because it was almost like you were being disrespectful or you were being disloyal by training in MMA, because it was something that they didn't think would last or hang around for a long time. So it was like it was still viewed as almost barbaric. So they're like, what's wrong with what you've learned? You're supposed to stick to that. What are you doing? And I started being a lot of murmuring in a lot of circles, but I understood the value and the direction in which it was going and how important and prominent it would be. So I started training in it, and I started offering programs at my academy with it.
Now, was this before the Ultimate Fighter season 1, or was this around the same time when you started?
This was probably around the same time.
Okay. Yeah,
this was probably around the same time. So I started training in it. I got in on the ground floor, and because of that, when it did gain wheels and prominence, I was light years ahead of a lot of people because I started when a lot of other individuals still balked at it and didn't think much of it. So I was blessed in that regard that I saw value in something, and I got in early and I stuck with it. I did my first competition when I was also blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I did my first MMA fight. I was the type of person where I would look at something, and if I was afraid of it, then I would push myself to do it because I don't like to be ruled by fear. And I remember looking at it, and I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I don't never want to do nothing. And the minute I spit out my mouth, I was like, you know what? I was like, I have to do it now because I basically said I want to do it because I'm afraid. So I went in my email. I think it was something like even in my spam folder, and it was like some type of like email I got, and I clicked on it, and I just was like, I want it to be somewhere that I don't know. I don't have any control, any variable. I don't know anybody, and it was a show at a VFW hall in Kentucky, and I signed up for it. I signed up for it, and I signed my boy Brian. I signed him up to do it as well. We didn't really know what we was doing training for it, but we did the best that we could train for it, right?
He wanted to do it though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought you said you just signed up. You're like, if I'm going down, I'm taking someone down with me. Let me just
Oh no. I probably should clarify that. That is how it sounds. So I signed up for it and told him I signed up for it. He's like, well, if you're doing it, I got to do it too. You know what I mean? Like, that's how we roll. So I signed him up for it as well. I didn't know nothing about cutting weight, so I literally fought at the weight that I showed up at. Like, whatever that was, I didn't know nothing about. This was unheard of at the time, like cutting weight. You know what I mean? Like, I think I ate a couple sandwiches on the way there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, hey, look, I don't even know what you're talking about, cutting weight. But what's crazy is this. This was back when the MSKC had super fights. So I'd already agreed to do a super fight with Mike Gibbs that next day.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. You could be two of Mike Gibbs. So y'all were gonna fight each other? Like, Mike's a big boy. And that's crazy.
Yep. We had a super fight. So check this out. So we went to Kentucky. We fought. Brian fought first. He won with an armbar in the second round. And at this point, I'm like, okay, my student won. I can't lose at this point. That's just not going to be a good look. So I ended up fighting, and I finished the guy with the arm triangle from the guard in the first round. You know,
arm triangle.
Arm triangle from the guard. He was throwing some elbows, and he started resting, and I was able to shift to the side, catch him in arm triangle, and get the stoppage. We were super excited. Cut the wraps off, celebrated, got in the car, and then drove home the same night. The next day morning, got up, went to the tournament. I can't believe it was, remember, it was Jeff Bryant or it was Dan Kuznos. And Brian competed in the divisions earlier that day. He competed in the forms division and his point sparring division. I fought Mike Gibbs for a super fight, right? As a heavyweight, because he's heavier. I think he beat me by 1 point. And then after that, we had also signed up for Brian to fight a kickboxing fight that night for at Macomb Martial Arts in Universal Mall.
Yes. Because they used to have fights all the time. Yeah.
Drove over there, and Brian competed in kickboxing that night and stopped the dude in like the second round. Had to be thrown up in a bucket because he was like killing him to the body, and he won his kickboxing fight. So he won his his MMA fight, did a karate tournament, and then did a kickboxing fight all within 24 hours time.
Yeah, I think I was there for that. That was 2006 or 7, I believe.
Yep.
I was there for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So just continue down that path, man. My black belt in jiu-jitsu, first degree black belt is under Jean-Jacques Machado. If you don't know him, he's a bad dude. He was born with a birth deformity where on one of his hands he only has like a pinky finger and he has a thumb, but he doesn't have any fingers. And he's won every jiu-jitsu championship, that you can win. So I've trained with many of the Gracies. I've trained with Hoyler Gracie. I've trained with Hickson Gracie. And I've also trained with Hoist Gracie. Also got most of my ranking through the Machados, Carlos Machado, and
Egan.
Obviously Doc Machado. Trained with them as well. So I've been blessed to be able to. I haven't trained with Hegan. He's one of the ones I haven't trained with, but he's the one who gave my instructions back.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. There's a reason I asked that, because I know that when I met Tyrone and when I met Jamel, I believe Tyrone was with Kaiki, and I know Jamel was up under Kaiki at one particular point, and they ended up going with Machado.
Yeah, that's another story for another segment. But believe it or not, that was large in part. The break off was large in part to something that happened to me. So we'll cover that a different day.
Okay, all right, we're gonna talk about that one day.
It spiraled an entire course of events, that just was really ugly, and it talks about the prejudice it will talk about the prejudice that jiu-jitsu had back in the day, and we'll talk about that and cover that on a different segment, which is why I'm glad it's much more widespread now. It's popularized, and just the Brazilians are not the ones that are in charge of it any longer. but we'll cover that in a different segment. But that's kind of a crash course into who I am. I'm blessed right now. I train alongside Dewey Cooper, who is Francis Ngannou's head coach, and many other UFC superstars. And yeah, so it's I was able to parlay getting in early on the ground floor in MMA and jiu-jitsu into being able to kind of transition to where I'm currently right now. So definitely
you guys must have been traveling around too back in the day, because I remember when I was training with Ty and when I was training with Jamil, I'm wondering, like, I've never even heard of jiu-jitsu before. And like, these guys Jamil was a purple belt.
That's right.
I started training with him.
I was there when he got a purple belt.
And Tyrone was a brown belt when I met him. And I'm thinking, like, okay, these guys have these belts. That means they've been training, they've been at this for a minute. Like, you can drive and see karate schools, taekwondo schools all the time. You weren't seeing jiu-jitsu schools anywhere. So I was wondering, like, how did these guys even find out about it and even jump into this activity?
Probably the early Pancration days and the early UFC days, because that's, especially with the Pride and Pancrase, like, that was like a big, like, they were like, I don't know, I don't want to say streaming, because that's like a word we use now. Back then it wasn't streaming, but you know, their fights were getting thrown on at like 3 a.m. over here. So you had some diehard fans, you know, those like weird obscure sports channels that just have
I mean, I guess they were advertising that, because I wouldn't have known, like, how to even find out about it. Like, I really got into it when Tough came on, The Ultimate Fighter. That's when I saw the first season, it was cool. Saw the second one, it was cool. The third season of The Ultimate Fighter is what really drew me to MMA. And that was because I remember Ken Shamrock from the first, you know, UFCs in the early 90s, you know, 93 and 94. I remember Kim Shamrock from there. And then I remember him in the WWE. So when I saw him on the season 3 of The Ultimate Fighter, I was like, oh, Ken, he back doing UFC stuff. And I saw him with Tito, and they had a lot of friction and a lot of bad blood between them. So I was really drawn into that season. And after that season is when I said, you know what, I got to learn this. I want to do this also. And I was just on a mission trying to find a school. And man, it was hard. It was hard trying to find a school. So when I found Macomb Martial Arts, and they had everything there. And they had MMA classes, they had jiu-jitsu classes, they had boxing, they had kickboxing, they had Muay Thai, they had everything there. I was like, oh, this is the perfect place. So it was unfortunate when they eventually closed down.
But to your point, it just goes to show you still how new the activity, the martial art, the sport was to our area, but just period to the United States, to America, because it wasn't uncommon for you to, and this would speak to why there probably were a lot of programs that were not great programs. It wouldn't be uncommon to walk into a facility and see a purple belt as the head instructor, you know, or even a blue belt. Like for me, I was fortunate because I already had my martial arts school in Hazel Park at the time. So when I was training and I got my blue belt, what would happen early on is, because there was no videos you can see, it was hard to be able to watch there were no instructionals. You had to really do a deep dive and search. Like I said, I used to go to Borders every week and buy the books one at a time so I can refresh on the moves. I would forget a lot of the moves, you know, even between class, I would forget them because they were so new and foreign. I hadn't been a white belt in so many years, like you intimated, you know, and you articulated. So for me, I was like, I have to find a way to remember these moves. So I started teaching it at my academy to my already existing martial arts students. So I didn't open up a program. In fact, I refused to allow, because that was jiu-jitsu back then, and even still today, was a very big challenge culture. And there was even a stint where people were going to academies challenging folks because that's what the Gracies did. That was the blueprint that they had laid out. So it was popularized. So it was something that I taught to my students. I added it to our programs, but it wasn't something that you couldn't come out from the outside world and just join my academy in jiu-jitsu, because I was only a blue belt and it wasn't unpopular. One of my classmates, he was from Canada. He opened up a whole academy. Like, I already had my academy opened, and I was teaching kids and a couple other students that, you know, guys that wanted to learn, who used to like to watch UFC. They wanted to learn the moves. It helped me by teaching to rep the moves and remember them. But this dude just went and put some money down and opened up his own academy, you know, and he was just a blue belt, you know, in Canada. He would come back to class and ask questions. Hey, I got guys coming. what do I do if a guy does this or that? And my instructor wasn't happy with it because at the time he was just a purple belt, you know, and he had did the same thing as me. He was offering jiu-jitsu, but again, he had already had a martial art program. And he was like, look, man, like you're going to get yourself hurt. Like this is a time where you don't have all the answers, and you're inviting people to come in a challenge culture like jiu-jitsu to be able to just roll with you and fight against you. And you don't even have a martial art background at all, aside from this. You know, so for me, it was a blessing that I already had an academy. It was easy for me to integrate it. I didn't start offering a jiu-jitsu program that's open to the public until I started offering an MMA program, which was easier to offer at the time because of the popularity of the UFC, like you had just articulated, but because we already know striking, right? We're already strikers. We're already black belts in striking. So you can teach and I was already learning kickboxing. So yeah, I can teach people jab, cross, hooks. You know what I mean? You know, I know enough functional wrestling, and then I'm going to start sprinkling in the jiu-jitsu that it is that I know, because it's easy to teach somebody these things that don't know anything at all. They have very low expectations. They need to learn everything anyway. So as they're learning, I'm still leveling up, and it made sense at that time. But this is why there was a lot of bad programs, I believe, because you had blue belts, white belts, early purple belts that were opening up spots and teaching programs, and they didn't know anything about curriculum. They didn't know anything about how to be able to deal with actually disseminating information to people who maybe didn't understand something. They were not teachers. They were just competitors who loved jiu-jitsu. They wanted to capitalize off of the wave of MMA and jiu-jitsu that was popularizing.
Yeah. And I went to a few schools also, man, and you learn one or two moves, and next thing you know, you rolling. And as a white belt,
the whole time.
You don't know anything. You trying to literally survive. You're trying to make sure that you can get back in the car and go home. You know,
it's the one thing I dislike about jiu-jitsu. It's you get 3 techniques and then we're rolling. And what'll happen is the people know that, so they'll come in late during the technique portion. You'll see the sharks. They walk in with their flip-flops, they got their gi rolled up. They're not gonna come there for the warm-ups, or they're not coming there for the 3 moves. Once the moves is done, they come out on the mat, and now it's time to roll. They're like, I hope that out of them 3 moves that he taught that you got something, because I'm getting ready to come and put it on you. Yeah. You know, and it's crazy. That's the one thing I dislike about it.
And you know, it's funny you say that, man, because I don't know you know this, but a couple years ago, I reached out to Brian, and we were playing phone tag with each other because I wanted for my school what I wasn't going to do what some other people did. I wasn't going to try and teach jiu-jitsu just because I know, by all 3 of us being martial artists, we can kind of figure stuff out. You know, you can see some moves on YouTube or watch an instructional, and then you can kind of put some stuff together. I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm not going to teach somebody something if I don't have all the answers, because they can get hurt. And that's my reputation. So I reached out to Brian to see if I could pay him to come teach jiu-jitsu at my school. I reached out to him. We were playing phone tag. He called me. I called him. We just never got on the same page together. And I eventually ended up hiring someone else. I have a guy named Steve Williams. He's actually one of Tyrone's students. He comes out and he teaches jiu-jitsu for me on Friday nights at my academy. Worked out fine. But yeah, man. So when you said I didn't feel comfortable doing that, especially being a white belt myself. I just didn't feel comfortable even attempting to do that. But that's cool, man. So we got our backgrounds. Chris Walker, he's our other co-host. He'll be on next week. He can explain his background. That should be pretty interesting also, because Isaiah, you and Chris, you guys have done it all. Like last time I talked to Chris, he was a brown belt. I'm not sure what he is now in jiu-jitsu. Have you asked him, Angel?
No, I was surprised when you say he was a brown belt.
I asked him. I believe he told me he was a brown belt. So he's been at it for a while. And, you know, Chris, man,
he's done everything.
Yeah, he's done everything.
Literally
everything. Yeah, so he's gonna be a good addition to the show.
He probably did like Lethway or some shit. I wouldn't even be surprised if he done that. If he was telling me that, I'll be like, I wouldn't. Doesn't shock me.
So let's talk about this now. The different types of jiu-jitsu. So, like I said before, we have self-defense jiu-jitsu. We have the rolling, the sparring, but we have competition jiu-jitsu, and you have jiu-jitsu for MMA. One of the main reasons why I wanted to add jiu-jitsu to my academy was because our foundation, my uncle taught me American karate. American freestyle karate is, you know, is our foundation. But it is originally he was taught Taekwondo. So it's like a modified version of Taekwondo is what he taught. But so our forms, our katas are still the same. They're still Taekwondo katas. The self-defense that we were doing, I did not like. I didn't feel like this is going to work in real life. So that's why I wanted to strip out the one steps that we were doing for self-defense and added jujitsu. And that's one of the things that, you know, led me toward Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, was because they are focused more so on the self-defense. There's striking in our jujitsu. So like we'll put on gloves and punch, and we have to block and defend, and then you go for a submission, or I should say, go find a better position, then go for a submission. They do knife training, they do gun training and things like that. All stuff that I haven't even attempted to start learning yet. I'm still in the combative era, so I'm still at the beginning, even though I've been there for you know, a year and a half now. So we have that. I know. I know I could talk about self-defense stuff that I enjoy, but the differences, Isaiah, you're going to be way more informed than I. Can you talk about the differences that there are when it comes to jujitsu? Because I mean, I'm assuming you've done it all.
So it's interesting that you brought that up. I have trained and done some training under the Gracie system for that reason that you talked about and you just articulated, the self-defense. So for those who are listening and you hear us talk about self-defense, I know you're thinking that, you know, all martial arts is self-defense. We don't mean that. So I want to, and I have to make sure that I explain that, because it can be confusing to people who may not understand. So yes, martial art, learning any martial art style or system is considered to be self-defense, the ability to defend yourself. But when we talk about self-defense, we talk about self-defense techniques. These means it means that someone engages you in a certain type of a way, and then you're able to de-escalate the situation, oftentimes without even having to strike an individual, but you're able to disarm, dismantle, or take down, and the striking or finishing portion of it is at your discretion, but you're able to safely escape a position without it actually being an actual fighting situation where we're engaging, going back and forth. So an example of that would be like if someone grabs your wrist, and the way that I can actually disengage from someone grabbing my wrist, or somebody get out of me with a choke, or somebody grab me in a bear hug, or a choke from behind. These are initial positions that eventually lead to us fighting back and forth. But if I can actually, stop the person, escape, or disengage at the initial point of encounter, then that's going to be good for me. I think self-defense techniques are really big, because as martial artists, we are always taught that we're supposed to conduct ourselves under a certain type of code of ethics. We all have our tenets and things like that. And with that said, every time that I have to defend myself or fight, it will not always, it's not always necessarily against an opponent or a foe or enemy, right? And as adults, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you might be hanging out with somebody that just had one too many drinks, right? And y'all hanging out watching UFC. The dude started getting loud, and before you know it, he done grabbed your shirt collar with two hands. Now, as black belts, we can put the guy in the hospital like that. But do I want to put my boy in the hospital who just had a couple of drinks too many?
Right.
Do I want to put this woman in the hospital because she's upset and she put her hands on me? Do I want to put, my uncle or a best friend of mine or a potential friend in the hospital in ICU by punching them in the throat with a reverse punch or breaking their nose because we have a disagreement at a time? No, if a person grabs me and they choke me or they grab my wrist, I should have enough understanding as a martial artist to where I can decide at this point what type of restraint or how I want the situation to end. And the self-defense systems and techniques that you learn allow you to escape safely, and then also be able to determine, what kind of impact or how much pain I inflict on the person in whom, actually, approach me or attack me. As relates to your question directly about the differences, I think that the Gracie system has a phenomenal self-defense system personally. And when I started training with a good friend of mine, Montes Peterson, is what stood out with me the most. I learned as much self-defense and what I learned is we learned maybe 2 choke escapes, maybe a wrist escape and a escape from a grab from behind. Very generic things. And in the traditional martial arts systems, many of them, the old school ones, that was not a really big point of focus, unless it was maybe like Japanese based. And a lot of the Korean systems and Chinese systems, it's just not really a big focal point. And that stood out to me. So the self-defense that I currently teach are all things that are derivative or derived from the system in which you're training in, that you're talking about.
Okay.
I think we have a phenomenal self-defense system, and there's a lot of realism that's behind it. And more than anything, that's what I took for it. I think we have somewhere between 90 to 100 moves, a self-defense system based on what I already have, what my other black belts implemented, and then the majority of it, probably 75% of it, is from the Gracie combative system of self-defense. Is what we use. It's very effective, and I do like it a lot. And I think that it really stands out, and it stood the test of time.
And the Army uses it also. That's what they teach in the Army. That's
so
the combative.
So do certain police task force.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's really good.
Now, sometimes people say, one of the things that people that study the combatives will say, well, if you're doing sport jiu-jitsu, you're not really prepared for self-defense. I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I kind of get an understanding of what they're saying, but hell, if a sports jiu-jitsu practitioner takes me down, it ain't nothing I can do. It doesn't matter at that point. They're gonna hold me down. I'm not gonna be able to get up. So what does it really matter? Like if I'm let's say if I'm trying to punch you, right? It doesn't matter that you haven't been trained to block a punch.
The problem is the classifications, and this happened when jiu-jitsu became really big and started to popularize more. You know how we do as Americans, we start really titling things and defining things and splitting things up. And you do that to be able to give what you do some sense of relevance, right? So like I might not be really good at tournaments, so I'm gonna say that the tournament sports stuff's not gonna work. So that's the reason why we need to learn the combative self-defense system. And then maybe me, I'm just a competitor, and I'm like, man, like I love going to tournaments. I'm first place in my division. I tap everybody out. I ain't got time to be trying to learn how to get away from no wrist escape or choke escape. That stuff's not real. And you create an unnecessary divide in an activity instead of being able to embrace all of it. And I think that's where it comes from, which is why we're having this discussion. For those who aren't aware, jiu-jitsu was a Japanese martial art that was in existence well before the Gracies, perfected it. All right. And I will give them credit for that. I think that what they did with it and the adjustments and modifications that they made, it really crossed it over very well, because a lot of the traditional martial arts, especially the ones with Japanese background and lineage, is steeped in tradition, and they're not modernized. And that's the problem. Like, this is not 1600 Okinawa, Japan. The problems that we're going to be facing and dealing with is a lot different than when the systems were created. So a lot of the things are very antiquated. But because of the fact that Japanese individuals, just people, their culture of life is a very traditional, type of way that they live. And they really revere so many different things, which is why their culture, it's so strong, and the martial arts systems and just the way they pour tea, the way they eat, the way they do business, they interact, all of those things. But with that said, it's jiu-jitsu itself is a Japanese martial art, and the Gracies took it and they found ways to be able to make modifications to make it have the crossover appeal that we know it today. For a while, they would classify it as Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and everything that they did was to make sure that you understood that they got the credit for it, that it was separate. So like when you look at the belts and you see the bars on their belts, like the little bar where you put the tape on, that was to make sure that you understood that we were Brazilian jiu-jitsu and these guys are just Japanese jiu-jitsu. Like everything, the way that we referenced it, the way the gis look, everything. And then at some point, like the UFC, how they kind of changed away from it being an acronym, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, to just being UFC and being synonymous with MMA. at some point, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just became synonymous with just Jiu-Jitsu altogether. Nobody calls it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu anymore. It's either BJJ or just Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
So, they really kind of like just kind of transitioned it in and just kind of got away with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu factor to just talk about and kind of show what they feel to be as the dominance and the importance of it. But we split everything up, I think. And that's the sport jiu-jitsu, the combative jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu self-defense. Really, you should be teaching a complete program in your academy. And we're better at it than we used to be. But I still find, and you mentioned this earlier, Gene, about the fact that you go in some of these places and there just isn't a great deal of structure because a lot of them have curriculums for it. Think about it. All of us train traditional martial arts. It doesn't matter what system you train in. When you come in the door, most likely the core techniques you're going to be learning in the early stages, while you're a white belt, probably in the first 90 days, is you're going to learn a low block, a middle block, or down block, middle block, a high block, back fist, reverse punch, and a front snap kick, and a side kick. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what system you train in. Okay, you're not going to go into an academy as a beginner, and your first set of techniques is going to be a jump spinning hook kick, a jump spinning in out kick, a flying side kick. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to be breaking boards, bricks, but in jiu-jitsu,
you need to leave that academy if that's happening. You need to leave that academy because that's crazy.
In jiu-jitsu, I can go somewhere right now. Angel can go to somewhere in Connecticut, and when he walks in as a white belt, as a beginner, he can learn a cross choke, a half choke. He can learn, a sit-up sweep or a bum sweep or whatever else. And that's their traditional curriculum. Gene, you can go somewhere, and then your first, week or month, you might learn an arm bar, you might learn a triangle. Whereas over where Angel trained at, those are intermediate level techniques, maybe to them, right? You might learn an omoplata. Then I'll go to an academy, and then my first week, or two or month, I've learned a knee bar, a heel hook, and then at either one of these two academies, those are techniques that are advanced black belt techniques or just not taught at all. There's no universal curriculum, which is why it's split up like this. We're having this conversation. Even though there isn't any technical, guidelines that everybody teaches under, every traditional martial arts system understands these are core fundamentals that people need to learn coming into the door to be able to defend themselves and or to be competitive. And jiu-jitsu is not that way. So if I split it up and I make it combative jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, MMA jiu-jitsu, I can then just teach a mixed array of stuff, and this is where the lack of structure comes. This is where the confusion comes from. This is why we're having this conversation.
Angel, so you have been training for competition and MMA. Have you done different types of jiu-jitsu training for both?
Yeah. So, like, all right, I'll even give a personal story. There was one time, and we talk about, this didn't happen to me, but like I saw, so someone in our class got yelled at, right? And it was because, and Zeke, you could go ahead and like, you'll be able to know exactly what I'm going to say as soon as I say it, is one of the guys, we're doing our MMA sparring rounds, and he went for a heel hook. And in MMA, dude, that's like footlocks. It's like literally like almost like a 70-30%. Like 70%, you go for that, you might get knocked the fuck out with like trying to go for, because you got to remember, like, and Zeke will be able to say it way better than I can articulate it, but like I'm going from a heel hook. I'm on my back in a compromised position, trying to put a 2-on-1 on your leg. Now I have no sense of defense unless the only way I have my defense is if I'm going to turn you, roll you, then we're going to be belly down. But if I don't, then at that point you could stand up as you're going and you could punch me in the face. I have to let go. I have to physically let go to then start to do my blocking sequence. Then from there, you could probably pass my guard, put me in side control. It starts to become a real dangerous day. And I remember one of our coaches, he got real big on that. On like some things don't translate over. They don't translate over well. And like Zeke, like you see, everyone right now, especially in like jiu-jitsu, we talk about like what traditional curriculum is, and everyone has a different curriculum. You would have told the Gracie Jiu-Jitsus, back then we're doing heel hooks and and we're doing footlocks, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. Like that's not even like they almost saw it as like cheating. Like, oh, that's a cop out. As what we see in sport karate as that body jab. That is what it would look like in there. And but then if you do that, that people are doing that now in sport jiu-jitsu, especially in no-gi. But then you take that and translate that into MMA. It's not gonna work out as well. What do you think, Z?
When I was coming up, I remember somebody yelling at me back in the day. I won't say any names, and they told me that, that heel hooks and footlocks wasn't jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
and it was because they said that's not jiu-jitsu. They yelled at me. I was at a competition, and I think I was judging or I was going over some rules or something. And it was an old school guy, and they yelled, "That's not jiu-jitsu." And it was because they wasn't good at it. They didn't know enough about it, and they didn't teach it at their school. And they were a high level, I believe, even close to black belt, not a black belt at the time. And what it would have done is it would have diminished things, because when they learned jiu-jitsu and they learned the system, those are things that were not implemented at the time. And jiu-jitsu had evolved substantially, over the course of time, where, you started getting a lot of different grapplers that was involved in it, and they start introducing different elements. So that's to your point, Angel. As far as that goes with the foot lock or the heel hook, I have a different school of thought. Whenever I teach, it's really important, and I always impart this on my students. I'm not going to teach you to fight like me. I'm not going to teach you the things that I like. I'm going to teach you everything. And then I'm going to let you decide for yourself what you find to be effective and find your way from there. And then when I see you trying to use it or implement it, if I feel like it's not effective, we're going to have to modify it, tweak it, or we're going to just have to omit it altogether. But I'm not going to only teach you the things. I think that's very egotistical to think that I think that's not going to work. I feel like it absolutely worked. There was a lot of stints of individuals going through winning with footlocks. But to your point, you're absolutely right. The reason he yelled at him is because in order to finish a footlock, you have to commit both hands. That means you cannot strike, nor can you block, right? And you have to go all in. And when we talk about MMA sparring, think about it like this. The ones that were able to finish those heel hooks in actual MMA competition were people who were going to rip that thing and go all in, because they had no consideration or care for the other person's safety, because they wanted to win. That's the only way you're going to get a tap and finish it in an MMA situation, is if you go for it and then you actually put everything that you have behind it and you actually crank and you rip it. If I'm doing that in sparring, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later with the video that I want to introduce, so we're going to talk about this. If I'm doing that move in sparring, that means that I have to do that if I want to get my partner to tap, and then that's not cool. I have popped several of my students' knees with heel hooks and footlocks because they didn't want to tap, because they didn't feel it while we were rolling. And the thing is that the way that those submissions are designed, once you feel it, the damage is done, right? And they would always say, I'm okay. And several of them came back the next day either limping or on a cane. And they were like, you were right, Professor. You're right. And like I told you. So, yeah, he yelled at them because, number one, that shouldn't be a go-to move. You have to be an expert, number one, to even be trying to finish something like that. That should not be your focal point in an MMA situation. He wasn't wrong for yelling at him. He wasn't necessarily wrong for, I wouldn't say that, tell him that it didn't work, just making sure that he understood that this shouldn't be your plan A, And then also, if you're going for it in sparring, I got to wonder, are you the only way you're going to finish is if you act, unless this guy either taps early, or if you're trying to hurt him, because the only way you're going to be able to finish it in a real situation is to actually go for it hard. And that means you have no real care for your sparring partner. So I think he was trying to impart on him some good lessons. He may have not articulated it that way, but yeah, I mean, for sure.
No, yeah, I agree. And the other thing, especially to what you're saying, Zeke, is a time and a place for it too.
That's right.
Like it. I think in the position, I'm not gonna be able to say it well, but in the position that we were, that particular group of people were in, he wasn't in a position where he could have still been defensively aware. It was like what you said, like it was all in. Like you weren't like, the other guy was nice enough to tap early because he didn't want to hurt his knee. He also didn't punch him, but like that could have been a clear punch. You would not have. Would have been, and it would have caused, and then it changes the dynamic of the room. It changes the dynamic of the room, because then now the whole room is either on edge with that one person or now they're just on edge with everyone. The other thing I also noticed now with jiu-jitsu, and you see it a lot now in sport jiu-jitsu, is a lot more people are implementing wrestling ideology to get to attacking submissions, to get to getting to better positions. You're starting to see a lot more people trying to take risks with their double leg shots. They're trying to take risks with their single legs. Like I know people have some, and I'm sure we've heard it before. Like some people, they hate right when the match starts, you're going to drop back and pull guard. I'm one of those people that I say, but it's like, we're not doing nothing out of the rules. Like we're going to the rules. Like we're going what the rules say. Again,
I'm pulling guard, and so is my son. Right off the bat.
Yeah, that's like someone telling you, Zeke, like you can't use your sidekick because every time your matches are boring with just your sidekick. You can't tell, like it's in the rules. Why does it matter if you get so good that you stop my sidekick? Maybe that's the real conversation we need to have. So you're starting to see some people, like, they're starting to implement more wrestling ideology. They're starting to implement more things to like almost make the sport jiu-jitsu a little bit more well-rounded. I started noticing it. I see it in some of the different tournaments and some of like just the different streaming apps. Like, some of the stuff we're seeing. Some people are like, they're starting to take a little bit more risk with their double legs, and some people that may not have been a strong part of their game before, they're starting to implement those things now. And I don't know the extent of it, but I hear that some like the best guys in the world for jiu-jitsu, they actually go to Penn State to go train with the Nittany Lions, and they go to like kind of like get that wrestling work in with them because they want to get better with their shots, they want to get better with their sprawls. But yeah, so like, I mean, that's just another part of just with the different types of jiu-jitsu, how people are incorporating it.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about UFC 314, the recap.
314.
Did you like the card?
Yes, I got it. I've had the results up on my phone this whole time. I was waiting for us to pull it up. Yeah, man.
I have not really been 100% into the UFC in a long time. I've some people might say, what's the word they call people now? If you don't watch every single card, part time or something, I don't know. They say these guys that fought last night, like every fight, they were trying to finish each other, and I don't always see that. Yeah. Sometimes it seems like some fighters are trying to just win on points or whatever. These guys were trying to finish each other every single fight that I saw. If they still did the fight of the night, I don't know how they would have picked what fight was the fight of the night, because
they did actually. Well, they did perform. No,
it's called something else now, right? Isn't it?
Hold on, I was just there. Let me go back to it.
Because they used to have knockout of the night and submission of the night, right?
They took out knockout of the night. Now they do performance of the night.
Okay, I don't know how they. I mean, every fight. I mean, these guys, these fighters, they really went at it. I didn't watch the prelims.
Fight of the night last night was Volkanovski and Lopez. And
really,
yeah. And then performance of the night was Paddy Pimblett and Gene Silva.
Mm-hmm.
Paddy. I mean, you had a gonna get. Yeah, he put on a great performance.
It seemed like he had something to prove.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was talking shit about him leading up to that fight. Absolutely, he has something to prove. Realistically, he's been. I mean, people kill him, man. People kill him
because he doesn't really look like a fighter.
And yeah, and because what happens after the fights, how he looks by next week, he's gonna be 190 pounds. You know what I mean? But man, listen, when the guy gets in there, man, he does work, and he puts on a scary pace, but then also he's so composed when he fights, man.
Like, it seemed like he had a build up. It seemed like he like really turned it up at the end of the fight. Like, but I saw it building, and he just damn.
Yeah, man. Listen, to a certain point, man. Like, to his point, listen, man. He's good. I think I listened to the press conference, and Dana was saying, someone asked him, does he get one more fight and then get put into a title contention to get bigger name guys? And even Dana was like, oh, well, Chandler was a big name dude who
but
just puts him.
Chandler didn't look right. Did you see that look on his face, like when he like kind of rolled over and he was just hitting him in his face, like his eyes got really really big. He didn't look right. Like I almost thought that he might have been out and got woke back up from punches.
Hey, listen, that's true, man. It happened to Brian Ortega with Diego Lopez's last fight. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez, Diego Lopez hit him with a cross. Literally, you see it in the slow mo. He knocked him out cold, woke him up with the left hook right after. I was like, man, what would you have thought finishing a combination would have worked against you? Because he had that one. Another interesting part to the card was Patricio Pitbull's debut with the company, which there was a lot of hype and media around him going into it. But I'm gonna be honest, man, I've always liked Yair Rodriguez. I've always liked him. I see him not in the same I wouldn't say like talent. I don't even want to say that. I don't see him as like Max Holloway in terms of like, that like stardom skill level, but in terms of like I see a Max Holloway-esque of like, he may not he still beats top dudes, man. He still beats top dudes. He can still put on great performances. And he's just so smooth, man. He's so smooth between his fights. Like everything his transitions. I think Yair is I still think he has another run left in him. I think him fighting Max was difficult for him, but I still think he has another run left. What do you think, Zeke? What do you think about just some of the fights and just some of your favorite ones?
So, just real quick, I think what made the UFC so successful, in the beginning stages was the thought process about the styles versus styles.
Yeah.
That was great that they built off of that. It was genius. The boxer versus the wrestler, the karate versus, the kung fu, whatever the case is. And when you started watching it in the beginning stages versus the people who are becoming fans now, like literally when you watch the UFC's 2s and 3s and you came up on those, you kind of developed a fandom about that, to me, the style versus style thing. And that's why the earlier part, when you had the Matt Hughes and you had all of those guys, the Anderson Silvas back in the day, those were not only marquee names, but those fights were amazing because of the fact that they showcase different styles. I think to Gene's point, the reason why you get so many part-time people or people that don't watch all of them is because people have adopted one of the words that has really, I believe, hurt the sport when people think that it helped it, which is well-rounded. Well-rounded is you trying to be an expert at everything and really not being great at anything, which is why the majority of the fights become boring. I get it as an instructor, as a coach, that you have to make sure that you round everybody out so that you'd be functional everywhere. But as a fan, you kind of miss those people, like the Gary Goodridges. Like well, he might be like Derek Lewis is like a new age, I don't want you to say new age Gary Goodridge, but you know what I mean? Like if you get him down, he gonna be in trouble. But if he get up and he put his hand on you, so you gonna watch all 3 or 5 rounds, because he can be getting beat to death the whole time. But you're like, if he hit him once, so you're not going to be on your phone. You're not going to be eating shit. You're not going to be going to the bathroom. You're going to watch because you know that. Back in the day with some bad grapplers that was like that. It's like, yeah, he keep getting beat on the feet, but I'm telling you, if he get this takedown and he get on top, he going to submit. She going to submit. So
Damian Maia was another one.
Damian Maia was one of those,
Yeah.
So I think that the UFC, the MMA has kind of lost that, which is why sometimes it can be hard to watch and there's so many boring fights.
Well, I think also for me, I like the different personalities when I first really got into it, like around 2004, 2005. Nobody seemed like they were the same person. You take someone like Tito Ortiz and Matt Hughes. Both are wrestlers. But these two guys are not the same. They didn't remind me of each other at all. At all.
Good point.
And then you had people, like Chuck Liddell. Throw Chuck Liddell in there. You had GSP, you had BJ Penn. Everybody, even Robbie Lawler, because he was a young fella at that time. Everybody had different personalities, and we didn't get oversaturated with the UFC. So I think at one point in time they were doing like 4 a year at one point in time. So it was a good chance if you saw somebody in January, you saw them in April again. You know, not necessarily everybody is going to be on the same card, but it might be someone else. You know, so you eventually start seeing these guys a little bit frequently on every single card. Like now you see someone now they have a card damn near every week now. And it's different people, so you don't really get that same type of attachment to those guys. But at the same time,
they use like a WWE kind of like approach to market themselves, which is why, like the Paddy Pimbletts, you know what I mean? Like a lot of these guys, the Conor McGregors, the Paddys, a lot of the people, the Chael Sonnens, you know, not mean to cut you off, they looked at the template that they used back then, and they was like, okay, I see. Sometimes they even get out there and lose. You know what I mean? Like people out here still think Conor McGregor's undefeated. Dude lost like 5-6 times.
Wow.
Like people still think that he ain't been beat because he used a working format from the WWF to the WWE. He watched Muhammad Ali back in the day, how he would do stuff. Dude was renting out tour buses, like going around with bullhorns, tormenting people.
Right.
Like he was crazy. And it's like, listen, I don't even I just got to be at a fight and at least try to back up my words, and I got to go out there and sell these tickets. I didn't know that I got to be a ticket seller. So when you watch the Paddies, like yesterday, I never think he's gonna win. If I bet, I always bet against him. I never think he's gonna win because he doesn't look like a fighter. And to my point, which I was getting to, is because I don't feel like he's a specialist in anything. So when I don't feel like you're a specialist, I feel like there's no one it factor that you can do that will bring the fight back should you be down, you know what I mean, in the fight. I don't feel like you have that one thing you can do. Yes, he's a great grappler. So yesterday showcased some great striking. But do you have one punch like knockout? Are you a shark or a specialist? A lot of these guys aren't. And that's why certain people stand out, like the Yair Rodriguez, who is a striking specialist, who's functional on the ground and things like that. So, yes, I did enjoy the card and a lot of the fights. I think yesterday the reason why it stood out and it was so good is because there were more people that were specialists in certain areas that were showcasing those things, you know, and there was less people that were just well-rounded, that were just out there just fighting. You saw a lot of people going for it. And you saw some high-level IQ on the ground when they were on the ground from guys that were ground specialists. Standing from guys who were stand-up specialists, you saw it as well. And it wasn't an homage to the old school type of stuff, but I do see them getting back, and we're starting to see more of those people sprinkled in who's not trying to do everything, but trying to be especially dominant in the areas that they're good at.
What was your you guys' favorite fight last night? What was your favorite match?
I actually got a favorite match, and then I actually got a question for Zeke. My favorite match would probably, I got two. My favorite match in terms of like how we said, kind of like that homage to the old school, would be Volk and Lopez. I thought they put on a great match. I thought it went everywhere, and I thought you could see both guys wanted it. They pushed, and that's what you want out of a title fight. Another fight I thought that was really good was because of the hype was Gene Silva and Bryce Mitchell. And right now the fighting nerds are taking over. Like,
oh my God.
They're having their hot streak in MMA right now. Like,
I love it.
They are taking over, like, literally. I think, I'm not gonna lie to you, I wouldn't be surprised if UFC is gonna try and put a fighting nerd on every card moving forward. Like,
but that's great, because remember, that's what it was back in the day. You have those pockets with those dominant teams. Exactly. Remember, Gracie started it a long time ago. If you fought a Gracie, he's a Gracie. And then it built up. We had the Black Zillions. We had the
Team Quest. Team Quest.
Team Quest. Yeah, Team Quest. I love that. I love seeing that.
Jackson's MMA.
Jackson's MMA. We had that. You just have these people that they all get together. Like I said, the Black Zillions. You had the
Javier Mendez.
What was it? Praetori? What was the name of it? The Brazilian guys. They had the man, I forget the name of
You're not
those.
Brazilian top team, or you're not
No,
talking
no,
about
no.
Brazilian top
Before
team?
them, it was they were the Praetorians or something like that. I forget the name of them back in the day, but it was. I love seeing those emergence of those teams. It just seemed like nobody can figure them out. They just seem to be ahead of the bunch, or just have a group or conglomerate of individuals that just got everybody's number. And it's a culture where when you join it, you like, I can't be weak because everybody else is dominating. For the next guy that comes in, even if he's not as good, he ends up being indoctrinated into that culture, and then he starts to become better, or she starts to become better, and they go out and they have that run. It makes everybody better because you have to then figure out how you're going to contend with those people. So it makes everybody better.
That run is also kind of like the Dagestani's run, and like just that whole Dagestani's run, and like kind of just like the Russia group. Like, you know, everyone talks about now. If you fight someone from Dagestan, you automatically you say, "Oh, it's gonna be hell grappling them." Like your first thought is that, because that's the run that they're having. Is just, you know, it's gonna be hell grappling them. At one point, you know, before with TriStar Gym, you had someone from TriStar.
Right. That's
you
right.
Were like, you had someone from TriStar. You said, "I know I'm gonna get good striking, and they're gonna have good wrestling." Like that was like the thing that you knew you were gonna get out of them. So the other thing I was gonna say, and I was gonna ask Zeke, was, did you think Dan Ige's fight was stopped too early? I didn't think so, but do you think it was?
I'd have to look back at it again. Initially I said no, I didn't. I believe that there has to be a balance. So like, we'll say, oh, the guy was still moving. It's like, well, he's still alive. Like, he ain't dead. So like, yeah, he might still be moving, but that doesn't mean that he hadn't absorbed enough damage to where it shouldn't have been stopped. And what will happen when you see these type of things is oftentimes, I believe the referee thought about stopping it before. And then they'd be like, dang, I missed that opportunity. But the next time there's any sign of trouble, I'm going to jump in. And then the next time when something happens, they'll jump in. And at that time, it may be a little bit premature because they didn't stop it before when they should have. And somebody will say, well, you should have stopped it then. But how much damage has a person absorbed? And realistically, if you are trained as a referee, as a fighter as well, you can look at people and be like, this dude not probably not gonna get out of this position. You know what I mean? Like, and if he is, he sure ain't doing the right things to do it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's almost like, I'm sorry to put it like this, because we probably all know somebody that's want to do this, but it's almost like pulling somebody off of life support. It's like, this person's still alive, but what kind of quality of life are they going to have past this point? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of quality of fight is this person going to have after he or she has absorbed these many hammer fists and this many elbows? Or sometimes it's not even what happens on the ground, it's how they got to the ground by somebody getting hit with the clean shot and the way they fall back. And like you guys said earlier, sometimes a person is knocked out and they're woken back up, you know, by the fall, by the strike. So I didn't initially think that it was stopped too soon until they started, you know, with the controversy, and then he threw his hand up, like he popped up, like what? And it's like okay, like we want to, and as fighters, you got to sell it like that because you don't want the UFC to cut you. You want to build whatever kind of built-in controversy you can to make it seem like, hey, listen, you saw it, you heard what the internet said. You know, they stopped it too early. Dude might have been on his last fight of his contract, looking for, you know, but I just think that I'm not against the stoppage. I'm not against it. I can understand why people say that because of how he jumped up afterwards and protested it, but I'm not against the stoppage.
Okay.
And Angel, to go back to what you said, I felt Lopez. I was waiting on Lopez to really explode in his fight. Like I just felt like the whole fight, I was just waiting for him just to attack. And I know my man was moving Volkanovski, like he was moving a lot.
Volk didn't give him a chance.
He didn't. He was moving a lot. So I know
the one thing about Lopez is, if you ever watch in all his fights, even when he fought Dan Ige on short replacement, when anyone wants to engage with him on that straight line, Lopez usually comes out in a better position, whether it's with a knockdown, a knockout, or just the exchange itself. He was more successful in that exchange. But when he has to reposition his feet, he has to reposition his body motion, and then he has to go in and then attack. Because Lopez, if you ever noticed, his counter fighting is actually very, very well. And that's the thing that people forget on, is that he has really good timing. But when he goes out to attack, he doesn't go out to attack until he has you hurt. And that's where Volk started using that more championship pedigree that he has. He's like, hey, I've been in these moments before. I know what I need to do. I need to stay active. But activity doesn't mean I need to stand there and bang with you. Activity is me pop shotting on the outside, and I just keep the footwork moving. I keep my head movement. I keep you guessing. Because also what he's doing is, and I hate saying it this way because we want to see people go for those finishes, but also, you know, Volk is a little older. He's took some bad knockouts the past couple fights. So on his thing is, he's like, I'm a pop shot, and essentially I'm staying up on points. So you have to, he makes Lopez get put in a position where he has to take a risk and go for something big, whether it's a shot, whether it's an overhand, whether it's a kick. He makes him have to go for something bigger in nature, which then allows for him to either move, get out the way, or make him miss and make him pay.
Right. Lopez is Brazilian, right?
Yeah.
He's Brazilian and Mexican.
He's Brazilian.
Yeah.
And Mexican, right?
I think he lives in Mexico now.
Okay.
Does he live in Mexico? That would make sense why he came with the cowboy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was confused at first. So I'm gonna say something that's unpopular that just needs to be said. All right. And I'm gonna say it. Right.
Oh, we got a gene, but except for this,
he's leaning in with anticipation. Let me tell you something. The Brazilians, they tire, man. That's just it. Many of them do not have the. I'm saying many. I'm not saying all. Everybody's watching. Many of them do not have the best work ethic. All right, I can attest for this and account for this. They tire. If I have money up on any, and when I say money, let me tell you what I mean by money when I bet on these fights. I'm talking about $5 because that's all I'm putting on the fight is $5, and I will scream at a television like it's $500 for my $5 that I put up. Right? It keeps it interesting for me. It keeps it fun. If I got my money and I'm looking at a Brazilian versus anybody, I'm like, if this guy don't pop him in the first round, maybe halfway into the second, it ain't gonna happen. You know, and they seldom disappoint me in that regard. They tire. Even the best ones tire. And 5-round fights, they just don't fare well. Now you got to go back a ways to start being able to look at some Brazilians that you can refute what it is that I'm saying. But or unless they're still actively fighting and they're actually old school, like they've been fighting for a while. But Brazilians, they tire. And what I saw that's kind of what I saw, which started to attribute to the lack of activity as the fight went on, like Gene is talking about. They tire. They come in good looking shape. They often come in ripped up. They have really big muscles, which muscles cost. They cost. they cost because you have to carry all of that muscle with you, and you have to be able to carry it late into the fight as well. All right. Yep. People that's leaner, that don't have all that muscle tone and build on them, they don't have to carry that same type of weight around and that same type of burden. Right. I'm not saying that you can't have muscles to be fit. I'm just saying that they cost. You know, you have to have the conditioning to be able to back them up. Right. You know what I'm talking about. Some of us got some big SUVs and they look fantastic. But when you hit that gas station, it costs. Right. Versus the person that's in the sedan. Right, they both driving. They both can get me to where they need to get to. We both got nice looking cars, but that bigger SUV it costs, and that bigger frame costs. Brazilians, they tight. They just do. And anytime I start to see it get late in the fight, you start to notice the lack of activity, even if they're successful, large in part to the fact that they just typically tire. I'm just not sure if it's a geographical thing. I know, having seen a lot of them work and work beside a lot of them, they're not all of them aren't hard workers. They are hard workers, but they all don't have the best work ethic. And that may attribute to it. But just keep in mind what I said. And when you watch this fight going forward and you start to see it get past the halfway through the second round, maybe at the beginning of the second round, and it's a Brazilian versus somebody that's a non-Brazilian, and you start to watch it, you're going to notice that they're going to start to tire. The activity is going to start to diminish. Yeah. And this is what I believe that we saw. I don't think it was anything strategic why he was, because he knew he was losing. You're like, I'm sure somebody yelled out in this corner, bro, put your foot on the gas, you know, and at the end of the day, he just tired.
See, Angel, that was that controversial take that Travis was talking about earlier, that he's going to use the clip to do the intro. Yeah. That's it right there, man.
Hey, no, but that's a good point, though, man. Him saying that, you know, I think, like, 2 fights that ring in my bell, like, exactly what he's saying about them tiring. Gilbert Burns, when he fought Khamzat Chimaev.
Exactly.
Bro,
exactly.
Like,
Thank you.
He put out a crazy pace in the first half, couldn't get Khamzat out. Khamzat weathered the storm and just picked him apart. And the only reason why you would have thought he had a chance was because, like, Gilbert literally, tired as heck, threw a crazy overhand right, and just Khamzat it caught Khamzat with like 5, 10, 15 seconds left, whatever. But he wasn't in the fight at all. And then another one where that happened was, and you're going to say this definitely, Zeke, is when Jacare fought Kevin Holland and he got knocked out from the bottom. Jacare got knocked out because he was tired. He sat in Kevin's guard and literally was breathing, just posting, breathing. And then that's when Kevin, I think said it, you look tired, and then hit him with that hammer fist and then got up and knocked him out because he sat in his guard. Like, you saying that, I'm like, huh. And then I'm like, man, so then I'm thinking, like, oh, no, there has to be other fighters. But then I thought about Wanderlei. I'm like, all of Wanderlei's finishes were in the first 5 minutes of a Pride match. Like, if Wanderlei went 10, 15 minutes, you can say, okay, when he fought Rampage, you know, he had to turn it up, whatever. But look at what happened when he fought Krokop. Look at what happened when he fought some of the other guys. Yes, granted, bigger people, you know, all in that sense. But if you look at Wanderlei's fights, he rushes out the corner and hits you with that strong blitz right off the jump. So I'm like, yeah, that's a solid.
And Rampage tires too. And he would admit back then that he didn't have a work ethic because he partied. He went off of a lot of natural talent ability, and MMA wasn't as refined as it is today. Right. So using him as an example, you can, but you know, he was also exhausted as well. This is an exception when it comes to, you know, the exceptions are people like Davison Figueroa, who's fighting like at 125, such a smaller weight class.
He's so lean.
He's so lean and he's so small. But overall, if you look at these things, other than like those little straw weights and bantam weights and things like that, you know, they tire. And if they don't win early on, they're out of the fight. You know what I mean?
Chris Cyborg got tired early. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You guys just saying that. Now I'm running through people in my mind. I'm like, yeah, this person always gets tired. Yeah,
they tired.
Yeah,
they tired.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up with this. We got the professor's perspective. Here we go.
Jesus Christ.
So, this is a video that Isaiah, you wanted to discuss and talk about. Now, for our people who are listening on our podcasting networks and streaming, if you want to see this video, you're going to jump on to the Martial Arts Internet Network on YouTube so you can see the video, because Zeke is going to talk about it, but it's him discussing it. I don't think it's going to do it justice. You got to see this video that he's about to discuss. Take it away, Zeke.
Okay, so just a bit of background. Number one, this video is probably about 6 weeks old. I ran across it maybe about 48 hours ago while just scrolling on my IG. It popped up and I saw it. It stood out to me for a few reasons. One, the person that's getting knocked out, or with the flash knockout is Kevin Lee. Now, if you don't know anything about Kevin Lee's from Detroit. Believe it or not, a fun fact, I was Kevin Lee's first MMA instructor. And there's a whole story. We can do a different segment one day about my introduction to Kevin Lee, or Kevin's introduction to me. It's really funny and entertaining. I shared it with Angel and with Gene a while ago. But I was his first MMA instructor. I trained him and managed him through his amateur career. We won several championships. Eventually, Kevin, after he graduated, he went to Grand Valley University. After he graduated, he ended up moving to Las Vegas. And he ended up meeting up with Dewey Cooper, and then Dewey Cooper took care of him for the majority of his professional career. Many of you know his brother Keith Lee, who is the TikTok food critic phenom. So, you know, it's the Lee family. So I have known Kevin since he was like 18 years old. So when I saw this, it stood out to me for that reason. But there's a couple of things I want to talk about, a couple issues with the video that I want to highlight. First of all, I have an issue with the video itself. Okay. And this is big. And I need everybody to make sure that you lean in and you hear me when I talk about this. So I train train and coach alongside Dewey Cooper, like I said before. Many of you guys are familiar with the name. If not, he's Francis Ngannou's a head coach, as well as many other guys in the UFC and boxing sensations and things like that. Jesse Vargas, a lot of other guys. So we have a very, very, very integral system, whereas if the quickest way to get kicked off the team is to post sparring video. You can actually video the sparring session. You can video it. That's fine. That's for improvement purposes. That's something that they do in kickboxing and MMA, if you don't know. In karate, we don't do this. Sport karate, nobody's sitting up there videoing because we're getting rounds and we're trying to get work in to get better. That's not something that we really do. Unless you got a big competition coming up and you need to see some tendencies of yourself, how you improve. But this is common in MMA, and that's okay. But the biggest way to get kicked off the team is posting sparring footage. And the reason why is because you are actually damaging a person's career substantially, right? And you're causing a divide and a rift in the gym itself, right? So obviously whoever posted this was obviously present, most likely, and probably knew or was friends with the guy who he's actually fighting against, this Morali guy or whatever, right? And then they turn around, and because we're so addicted to clicks now and follows, they post this thing on here. And Kevin had just signed on not long ago with the GFL, which is a brand new league. And then they leaked this footage, of him at a gym, and he's sparring and he's getting dropped by a clean punch. This guy's a scumbag. Whoever posted this thing up, of somebody while they're sparring getting knocked out is a flat out scumbag. This should not be being posted, right? This is supposed to be for personal improvement. Number one, this creates an environment of fear and distrust, right? If I'm scared to spar or I'm scared to work on new techniques because I feel like that if I get clipped or if I get caught or something happens, this thing's going to get shared everywhere and it's going to start going viral. This hurts me because now future opponents of mine who I don't even know that I may or may not have is going to have footage of me and tendencies of me that they can use to train against me. We're supposed to be family. So that's number one. Number two, it's harder on a fighter. It makes it harder on a person's body because what this does is it changes the narrative and the culture. And Angel talked about this a little bit earlier when he's talking about the footlocks in the gym and the heel hooks and things like that. The thing is that now when Kevin fights, Kevin's not going to be in there sparring with these people like they're his buddies and like they're his sparring partners, right? He's going to be sitting up there fighting like it's an actual fight, fighting for your life. Because now I know people are out here with video cameras. He might be trying to get some get back by being able to try to drop the old dude so he can put something up online. This is not a good team environment and team culture. So now the sparring sessions are harder. Sparring sessions are supposed to be able to grow. So you need to be in a safe place where you can work on some things and I can say, I can implement this into my fight. I can't do that if I feel like folks are out here not only trying to knock me out, but also trying to post it, and it's counterproductive to growth. You typically find yourself fighting the exact same way and not implementing new techniques or new methods or ideals that you're learning because you're concerned about whether or not you're going to become TikTok famous from getting knocked out while you're trying to work on something. So the first thing before anything I get to break down the technique or my perspective is I think the dude is a scumbag for posting the video. Not for shooting it because he didn't know when that was going to happen, but to post it, he's a scumbag. And I would say the same thing if it was Kevin knocking the other dude out. It's not because I know him. We don't talk every day, right? It's because of the fact that this is the fastest way to get kicked off of our team. It is our rule. We have an integral system and create a safe space and a safe place where you should be able to work on something. Maybe he just learned his jump knee. And he was working it, he learned it in class. And then the dude just knocks him out. And that's fine. If he knocked him out, he dropped him. We're going to break it down and talk about why that happened in a second. But dude didn't have to post it. That's number one. We shouldn't be seeing this, right?
Right.
Next,
right.
The technique itself. Think about the technique itself. A flying knee, a flying jump fake knee, right? When will we see a technique like this typically, Angel? Like, what's the situation behind we would see a situation like this? Most likely, I think you guys can both agree, this is like a finishing technique, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to get a KO when you're doing this. This is sparring. So why am I throwing a finishing technique in a situation in which I can't finish the person? Does that make sense to you? Like, it's going to happen one of two ways. We saw it in the Ben Askren versus Masvidal fight because he ran out the corner and he did it. And I'm going to talk about why he was successful with that in a second. But then most times when other people catch it, they catch it in situations sometimes when they down, where they desperate, where they see an opening, and they end up finishing a person with this. In sparring, we're trying to get work in, right? Get movement in, implement new techniques, but throwing finishing techniques in situations where I can't actually finish the guy isn't necessarily helpful for the person for the person that's doing it. Goes back again to we talked about heel hooks in MMA. I said to finish a heel hook in MMA, you're gonna have to rip that boy, and you can't do that in the gym. So this is the reason, one of the reasons why Coach yelled at him, because he's like, dude, like you can't even really finish there unless the guy taps early or unless you hurt your partner's knee, right? So this is a finishing technique. It's going to be hard to be able to see some real results in actual sparring. He can perfect it on bags, on targets with his coach, but to actually land it, like if he would have landed this technique on dude, he would have knocked dude out, right? So what are we doing in here? We're trying to knock each other out, right? So that's number two. Let's talk about the proper execution of the technique and things that he did and he didn't do. So this is going to be important. Number one, he threw a technique naked. All right. Now, if you don't know what naked means, it means, as relates to fighting, it means throwing a technique without a setup. All right. So he ran out there and he tried to use the Masvidal approach, but he lacked what? He lacked the commitment that Masvidal had when he landed on Ben Askren. He also knew something about Ben versus maybe what Kevin would have known about his opponent and what he was going to do. He knew that Ben was going to wrestle. Ben historically had said, and that was the reason why Dana had a problem with him. I don't care if you like wrestling, if it's born or whatever else, that's my specialty and my pedigree, and I'm a wrestler. So he already knew going in that Ben was going to be changing levels to go down for the takedown, and he used that plus full commitment from the corner, meaning running out as fast as he can, giving himself enough time to leave the ground and fully committed to the technique. That's why you saw the result that you saw as relates to that with Ben Askren and Masvidal. This is not that. This is Kevin. We don't know how long they were sparring, how many rounds he went, if this was the beginning of this match or what, right? But he came out with a half-hearted commitment. He got way too close to him to realistically use this technique. And he had what? He had his hands down when he threw it. His hands were down. His chin was tall, and he had a lack of commitment, and we see the result here. The last thing that happened, which resulted in this, is he actually finished by landing right in front of him. So we have hands down. He didn't set it up. All right. It was a lack of commitment, and he finished this thing literally right in front of him. So everything was primed and ready for this technique to be thrown and for this result to happen. So in order to be able to land this, Kevin could have did some things like setting it up first, right? Using a jab or using some movement or throwing a couple kicks to be able to get him reaching maybe towards the legs or changing levels with strikes to get the guy not thinking about him actually landing this technique, right? Diverting his attention by changing levels with the striking. Setting it up with the combo, right? Oftentimes when we want to disguise something, we set it up with the combo first to ensure, that we can actually distract our opponent, and then we can just throw something fancy or whatever it is that we want to throw. And then make sure that we're, like I said, definitely not finishing right in front of the person. Movement and angles are going to be, key to success in any type of thing that I'm doing as relates to combat sports or fighting. But because of the fact that it was a half-hearted attempt, because of the fact that it was a lack of commitment, he didn't really get off the ground right. 2 feet were off the ground, so he couldn't cut an angle until he landed. And the guy just backed up, implemented great timing, and landed it right there on the chin. All right, so my perspective is this, in closing, guys, don't post sparring footage. All right, don't do it at all. All right, it's just a bad look. I know it's a flex. You got an amazing knockout. You got a great takedown. You finally got a submission on somebody in whom that you've been, going against forever. That's been kicking your behind, and you've been unsuccessful, and you feel proud, and you want to use that on your social media. But it changes the environment and the culture, substantially. Because at the end of the day, now that person's trying to get that get back. And then on top of it, nobody's growing because people are afraid to be able to try new techniques and work on things that they've been taught, so they continue to fight the same way. Anytime we're going to leave the ground to do a technique, we have to make sure that we fully assess everything. I have to commit to it. It's better that I set it up, right? And I got to make sure that my hands are up and that when I'm landing in a position to where I'm able to move and I'm not finishing right in front of my opponent. these are the things that happen with Kevin. That's both sides of it. That's my perspective about it. I hope that I change somebody's mind about this videoing and sparring. Keep the video for practicing purposes, but please don't post. And hopefully, if this is a technique that you like to use or you want to try to work on, make sure you are picking some sound sparring partners that you can trust. We all got them bros in the gym, and we all got those people that we stay away from. You know what I mean? Because we know that he ain't him. Maybe dude got a fight coming up, or maybe dude just, is not the kind of guy that's gonna let me get out there and get some work in. Let your partner know, maybe, I don't know what you want to do, or don't let them know, but just make sure that they working at a pace to where it's comfortable for you, where you're okay to make mistakes and you're okay to fail and still be safe in the process. But I believe this was bad for Kevin's career, as he just actually signed for GFL to have this floating around. Again, this is about 6 weeks old. All right. And I just believe that it creates a bad situation in the gym, right? Which is why people started leaving and gym hopping, and then they post this footage later on. Oh, remember, I knocked your A out, whatever else. And then it's just hard on the body, because now I can't come and comfortably get work in. Every time I sprawl, I got to fight hard and fight like I'm fighting for my life, because I don't want to repeat this situation to occur. That's my perspective.
All right, man. Wow. Something else.
You hit that nail on the head, man. It's like, hit the nail on the head. That's a serious thing, man. For that, just one thing I'll say, man, for that reason is why I don't throw spinning head kicks at sparring practice ever. I never throw it. Like, I never, and all my partners, even a lot of like pro guys, they'll ask me like, how do you throw it, whatever, do a private lesson with them. But I always tell them, like, I'll never throw a kick like that in sparring, because it's messed up, and then the damage it causes could be way more than.
My son's knocked a couple people out with them.
Yeah, like that.
My son's knocked a couple people out with them in sparring, and it's because oftentimes guys start trying to turn up. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, if we're past the sparring point and we're fighting now, then I have to make sure that I keep myself safe. You know what I mean? And then I'm smart, and I'm using things that I feel like you won't be good at, and you might not be able to defend against as well. But none of those knockouts ever surfaced on any social media platform, because at the end of the day, we might be having some gym beef today, or we might just be on one today. But then tomorrow or next week, when our fight is over with, or whatever else, we're gonna be hugging, and we still got to train and work. We still got to work together. That relationship is fractured, because I would think that that's your boy. Because why would he post it? Like, that's got to be your guy. Your guy was videoing, and then he turned around and he leaked it and he posted it. So the relationship is fractured. And even if that wasn't the case, the next time me and you fight, I'm not trying nothing new, and I'm not going to sit up there and take it easy. But who does that help, though? So now Kevin is going to have the same array of techniques, even underneath a different coach that he had, because he's afraid to be able to work on implementing something new, because he doesn't have a safe space to do it in, because of stuff like that. So this is why you see those fighters that don't evolve. They don't evolve, and you watch them later in their careers, and you like, hey man, why hasn't this guy gotten any better? And it's like, dude, like, do you know the culture in our gym? Like, I don't have nobody I can work on that stuff with. I can do it on pads, you know what I mean? But I can't do it in the gym. So if I'm not doing it in the gym, I'm not about to sit out there and go on TV and do it if I don't feel comfortable landing it in the gym. We got to be there to work with each other. It's okay to have hard sparring sessions and rounds, but you got to let people get work in. And even if you drop, I'm not even mad about him dropping them, because I just highlighted all the reasons why he successfully landed that counter punch and got the drop. And Kevin, I'm sure, ain't tripping. I mean, as a fighter, we all get our behind kick, and we're gonna get dropped at some point in time. But we shouldn't be seeing it, right? Ain't that what we said about the Draymond Green and Jordan Poole situation happening? We shouldn't be seeing that, right? And people said it all the time. They said this happens all the time. This is just basketball. Guys getting at you in the back. I would imagine they do. I ain't seen it once though. Why am I seeing this? Who's leaking this? That's what's not healthy, not the fight. And that's the reason why everything happened to Warriors, different segment, different conversation. But I'm using that as a frame of reference. We shouldn't be saying it.
All right. Well, that was a supersized first episode.
Love it.
That was good, guys. That was good. So next week we'll have more for you guys. You guys got any closing remarks?
I'm all good.
I love it.
All right. We'll see you next week. Say it once again, Angel. Stay safe, stay strong. We'll holler at you next week. And we are out.
Peace.